I was sipping wine in Santorini when Mom texted, "Everly is moving in." They had used my emergency key, changed my locks, and replaced my furniture. Dad told me to stop being selfish. Instead of crying, I made one international call that cost them everything. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The Aegean Sea was a shade of blue that didn't seem real. It was that deep, impossible sapphire color that you only see on postcards or high-definition travel documentaries. I was sitting on the terrace of a small, whitewashed villa in Oya, a glass of Asiatico wine in my hand, watching the sun begin its slow, golden descent toward the horizon. This was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. I had saved for 2 years, banking vacation days and working 60-hour weeks as a senior marketing consultant to ensure that when I finally left, my phone wouldn't ring. I had curated every moment of this 10-day escape to Greece. No emails, no client emergencies, no family drama. I was 4 days in, and for the first time in a decade, my shoulders were finally starting to lower from my ears. I took a sip of the crisp, cold wine and closed my eyes, listening to the faint sound of the waves crashing against the caldera cliffs hundreds of feet below. Then, my phone buzzed against the marble table. I ignored it. I had set a specific ringtone for work, and this wasn't it. It buzzed again, and again. A rapid-fire succession of vibrations that rattled the spoon on my saucer. With a sigh that was more exhaustion than annoyance, I opened one eye. The screen was lit up with notifications. Mom, 5 missed calls. Dad, 3 missed calls. Mom, text message images attached. My stomach tightened. That specific knot of anxiety was familiar. It was the physical manifestation of being the eldest daughter in the family I was born into. Something was wrong. Someone was sick or hurt or in jail. I picked up the phone, my thumb hovering over the messages. I opened the text thread with my mother, Barbara. The first message was a photo. It took a second to load on the villa's Wi-Fi, but when it did, my brain couldn't process what I was looking at. It was a picture of a living room. My living room, but it looked wrong. My beige linen sofa, the one I had custom-ordered from Italy and waited 6 months for, was gone. In its place was a lumpy, bright purple futon covered in mismatched throw pillows. My coffee table, a sleek glass piece, was buried under a mountain of fashion magazines and half-empty Starbucks cups. I scrolled down. "Mom, don't be mad, sweetie. We had a little emergency with Everly." "Mom, she got evicted again, total misunderstanding with her landlord. And she had nowhere to go. We knew you were gone for another week, so we moved her in." "Mom, it makes more sense this way. Your place is closer to the city center for her interviews. We put your big couch in storage for now because Everly's stuff didn't fit." My hand started to shake. The wine in my glass rippled. I read the messages again, sure that the heat stroke was making me hallucinate. They moved her in, they moved my furniture out. Then came the final text, the one that made the air leave my lungs as if I'd been punched in the gut. "Mom, oh, and Frank changed the locks this morning just to be safe since Everly has some crazy ex-boyfriend. We'll give you the new key when you get back. Enjoy the rest of your trip. Zoxo." I stared at the screen. The beautiful Greek sunset was still happening in front of me, but I couldn't see it anymore. All I could see was that purple futon. All I could feel was the violation. They hadn't asked. They hadn't requested. They had waited until I was 4,000 miles away, trapped on an island in the Mediterranean, to invade the one sanctuary I had built for myself. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. I just sat there, frozen, feeling a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the sea breeze. The betrayal was worse than the theft. It was the absolute certainty that to them, my life, my home, and my boundaries were nothing more than resources to be harvested for my sister. I dialed my mother first. It went straight to voicemail, of course. She had dropped the bomb and then gone into the bunker. I dialed my father, Frank. He answered on the second ring, his voice loud and jovial, with the background noise of a television blaring. "Camilla, how's the pasta? Or is it gyros over there?" "Dad," I said, my voice trembling with a rage I was trying desperately to suppress. "What is Everly doing in my apartment?" "Oh, you got your mother's texts?" He sounded unbothered, as if we were discussing the weather. "Yeah, poor kid had a rough go of it. Her landlord was a real piece of work, kicked her out with zero notice jus. Because she was a few weeks late on rent. Can you believe that? Illegal, if you ask me." "Dad," I cut him off. "I am not asking about her landlord. I am asking why she is in my apartment. And why did you move my furniture?" "We didn't throw it away, relax," Frank said, his tone shifting to that familiar dismissal he used whenever I had an emotion he didn't want to deal with. "It's in a storage unit. Everly needs to feel at home, Camilla. She's going through a trauma. She needs a safe space." "I live there," I shouted, causing a couple at a nearby table to look over. I lowered my voice to a hiss. "That is my home. I pay the rent. My name is on the lease. You cannot just move people in when I'm not there." "You're never there anyway," he shot back, the joviality gone. "You're always at that office, or traveling for work, or on these fancy trips. You have a 2-bedroom apartment in the most expensive part of the city, and you live alone. It's selfish, Camilla. Your sister is family. Family shares." "I didn't agree to share," I said, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "And you changed the locks? Dad, that is insane. You locked me out of my own home." "We did it for safety," he insisted. "Everly has that stalker ex, you know the one. We couldn't risk him having a copy of your old key. Look, stop making a big deal out of nothing. When you get back next week, we'll give you the new key, and you and Everly can work out a roommate schedule. It'll be fun, like a sleepover." A roommate schedule? I felt like the world was tilting on its axis. "Dad, she is not staying. Tell her to get out, now." "Don't be heartless," he snapped. "She's your sister. She's staying. We already unpacked her clothes. Just enjoy your vacation and stop causing drama. We'll talk when you land." He hung up. I stared at the phone, the silence of the line deafening. I opened the text thread again. New messages were coming in, this time from Everly. "Everly, hey sis. Thanks so much for this. Your bathtub is amazing. Put some of my calming crystals in the living room to cleanse the energy. It felt a little stiff in here." "Everly, also, do you have the password for the Wi-Fi? The one on the router isn't working." "Everly, photo attachment." The photo was a selfie. She was wearing my silk bathrobe, the one that cost $300, and holding a glass of my red wine. She was sitting in my office chair, her feet propped up on my desk, right on top of my client files. She looked triumphant. The sheer entitlement radiated through the screen. She wasn't grateful. She wasn't apologetic. She looked like she had conquered a kingdom she believed she deserved all along. I felt tears prick my eyes, hot and angry. I wanted to fly home immediately. I wanted to storm in there and throw her crystals off the balcony. I wanted to scream at my parents until they finally understood that I was a person, not a bank account or a safety net for their favorite child. But then I stopped. I looked at the photo of Everly again. I looked at the background. I saw the view from the window. I saw the specific molding on the ceiling that made my apartment so unique. And I remembered something. My parents and Everly lived in a world where feelings dictated facts. If they felt they were right, they were right. If they felt entitled to something, it was theirs. But I lived in the real world, a world of contracts, clauses, and legal binding agreements. And there was one person in my life who cared about rules even more than I did. They thought they had won because they held the physical key. But in their arrogance, they had forgotten one crucial thing. The lease didn't belong to the family. It belonged to me. And the man who owned the building was not the type of person you wanted to surprise. To understand why this text message felt like a knife in the back, you have to understand the dynamic of the house I grew up in. I was the draft horse, Everly was the show pony. From the time we were kids, the roles were set in stone. I was the responsible one, the old soul. If I wanted a bike, I had to deliver newspapers to pay for it. If I got a B on a report card, I was lectured on applying myself. Everly, 5 years younger, was different. She was bubbly, chaotic, and charming. If she wanted a bike, she got it because she looked so cute asking for it. If she failed a class, it was the teacher's fault for not understanding her creative learning style. My parents, Barbara and Frank, didn't just enable her, they crippled her. They shielded her from every consequence she ever earned. When she crashed her first car, they gave her mine. When she got fired from her first 3 jobs for personality conflicts, they paid her rent. I, on the other hand, worked. I put myself through college on scholarships and 2 part-time jobs. I climbed the corporate ladder in marketing by being the first one in and the last one out. My apartment, the one they had just invaded, was my trophy. It was a beautiful, sun-drenched space in a historic building in the Upper East Side. It wasn't just a place to sleep. It was the physical proof that I had made it, that I was independent, that I didn't need them. Everly hated it. Every time she visited, she would make snide comments. "It's so sterile in here," she'd say, running her hand over my organized bookshelf. "Don't you get lonely? It's too big for one person. You should let me decorate." Everly was currently finding herself. At 24, she had found herself as a DJ, a vegan baker, a crystal healer, and most recently, a lifestyle influencer with 300 followers. She had never held a job for longer than 4 months. The antagonist here wasn't just Everly, though. It was the 3-headed hydra of my family unit. Everly was the face of it, the one wearing my robe and drinking my wine. She was polished, pretty, and utterly vacuous. She had a way of looking at you with wide, innocent eyes while picking your pocket. She truly believed the world owed her a living. "Camilla has so much," she would say to our parents, pouting. "She doesn't even use half her money. Why is she so greedy?" And Barbara was the enforcer. My mother viewed my success not as my achievement, but as a family asset pool. In her mind, my hard work was simply luck, and therefore, it was my moral duty to redistribute that luck to the less fortunate members of the family, namely Everly. "You're the strong one," Mom would tell me whenever I complained about bailing Everly out of yet another jam. "Everly is sensitive. She needs help. You don't need help." It was a curse masked as a compliment. Now, sitting in Greece, I realized they had finally crossed the line of no return. This wasn't asking for $50. This wasn't crashing on my couch for a weekend. They had physically seized my property. They had violated my lease. And speaking of the lease, Mr. Henderson. My landlord was a legend in the neighborhood, but not for being nice. He was a 70-year-old ex-military man who treated his building like a barracks. He had a zero-tolerance policy for, well, everything. No loud music after 10 p.m., no trash in the hallways, and absolutely under no circumstances were there to be unauthorized occupants. His lease agreement was 40 pages long. I had read every word before signing. There was a specific clause, Section 8, Paragraph C. Any unauthorized alteration of locks or entry mechanisms will result in immediate lease termination and forfeiture of security deposit. Any subletting or occupation by guests for longer than 3 days without written landlord consent is a violation of lease. Mr. Henderson didn't know Barbara and Frank. He didn't care about Everly's trauma. He cared about order. I looked at the picture of the purple futon again. I looked at the new lock on the door in the background of Everly's selfie. My parents thought I was helpless because I was 4,000 miles away. They thought I would just yell, cry, and then eventually accept it because family is family. They were banking on my proximity to surrender. But they had forgotten that in the digital age, you don't need to be in the room to drop a bomb. You just need a phone signal. I finished my glass of wine. The shaking in my hands had stopped. It was replaced by a cold, calculating clarity. I wasn't going to cut my trip short. I wasn't going to fly home and scream on the lawn. I was going to finish my vacation. But first, I had a call to make. I didn't call my parents back. I didn't text Everly to tell her to get her feet off my desk. I knew that any direct confrontation with them would just result in more gaslighting. They would tell me I was overreacting, that I was being mean, that I needed to calm down. They would wear me down until I agreed to let her stay, just for a few weeks, which would turn into months, which would turn into forever. I needed a nuclear option. I needed an external force that couldn't be argued with, cajoled, or guilt-tripped. I needed Mr. Henderson. I checked the time. Greece is 7 hours ahead of New York. It was 8:00 p.m. here, which meant it was 1:00 p.m. back home. Mr. Henderson would be in his office, likely eating his tuna sandwich and reviewing maintenance logs. I pulled up his number. My finger hovered over the call button. I knew what I was about to do. I was about to effectively evict my own sister. I was about to cause a scene that would likely sever my relationship with my parents for a long time. I looked at the photo of Everly one last time. The smugness, the entitlement, the way she had simply erased me from my own home. I pressed call. Henderson Properties, his gruff voice answered on the second ring. Mr. Henderson, this is Camilla from apartment 4B. Ms. Camilla, his tone softened slightly. I was a model tenant. I paid early. I was quiet. I never complained unless something was truly broken. Everything all right? I thought you were overseas. I am Mr. Henderson. I'm in Greece, and that's actually why I'm calling. I have a bit of a security concern regarding my apartment. I heard the rustling of papers stop. Go on. I received a notification today that the locks on my apartment door have been changed without my authorization. I also have reason to believe there is an unauthorized occupant in the unit who has moved in furniture. The silence on the other end was heavy. Change the locks, unauthorized occupant? His voice dropped an octave, turning into the growl of a guard dog that just heard a twig snap. Who is it? It's my family, I said, keeping my voice steady. My sister. My parents apparently helped her move in while I was away. They told me they changed the locks. Did you give them permission? No, absolutely not. I found out via text message an hour ago. Ms. Camilla, he said, and I could hear the sound of him standing up, his chair scraping against the floor. You know my policy. Section 8, paragraph C. I know, Mr. Henderson. That's why I'm calling. I did not authorize this. I am worried about the security of my unit and the violation of my lease. I am not comfortable with unauthorized tenants in my home, especially with locks I don't have a key to. Right, he said. Do you want them out? Yes, I said, the word tasting like iron in my mouth. I want them out, and I want my locks restored. Consider it done. I'm going up there now. I'll call the locksmith on the way. If they don't open the door, I'm calling the police for breaking and entering. Changing locks on a rental property is illegal, family or not. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Don't worry about it. Enjoy your vacation. I'll handle the pests. He hung up. I set the phone down on the marble table. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I poured myself another glass of wine. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I imagined Mr. Henderson walking up the 4 flights of stairs. He never took the elevator. He marched. I imagined him pounding on my door with that heavy, authoritative fist. My phone started buzzing again. It was Mom, then Dad, then Everly. I let it ring. The voicemail notification popped up a minute later. It was my mother. I put it on speaker, holding the phone away from my ear like it was a live grenade. Camilla, pick up the phone. What is going on? There's a man here screaming at Everly. He says he's the landlord and he has the police on the way. He's trying to drill the lock. Call him off. Tell him it's a misunderstanding. Tell him we're family. She sounded hysterical. In the background, I could hear Everly screaming, "You can't do this. I live here now." I took a sip of wine. Another call came in. It was my father. I declined it. He immediately texted. Dad, call this man off now. He is threatening to arrest us. He says we broke in. Camila, this is insane. We are your parents. I typed a reply. Mr. Henderson is very strict about the lease. You changed the locks without permission. That is a violation. I can't control him. Dad, you called him. He said the tenant called him. You did this. Why would you do this to your sister? Why did you change my locks? He didn't reply to that. Instead, another voicemail came through from Everly. You are such a bitch, Camilla. Oh my God, everyone is looking. The neighbors are in the hallway. He's literally taking the door off the hinges. I hate you, I hate you. Where am I supposed to go? Mom, do something. It was chaos, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't in the middle of it, trying to fix it. I was thousands of miles away, watching the sunset, letting the consequences of their actions finally catch up to them. Mr. Henderson called me back 30 minutes later. Ms. Camilla. I'm here. It's handled, he said, sounding slightly out of breath but satisfied. The police arrived. I showed them the lease. I showed them that the locks were non-compliant. Your parents tried to argue that they had implied consent because they were family. The officers explained that breaking and entering is still breaking and entering, even if you share DNA. Is the apartment empty? It is now. I gave them 1 hour to remove their belongings, or I told them I'd have the sanitation department haul it away as abandoned property. They're scrambling. That purple sofa is on the curb. The young woman was vocal. I can imagine. The locksmith is here now installing a high-security deadbolt. I'll keep the keys in my safe until you return. I've also informed the doorman that none of those 3 individuals are allowed on the premises. If they show up, he's to call the precinct immediately. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I really appreciate it. You're a good tenant, Camilla. Don't let people walk all over you, not even kin. I hung up. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was lightness. The heavy dread that had been sitting there since I saw that first photo was gone. But I knew it wasn't over. The Hydra had lost a head, but it would grow back. They were regrouping. They were currently on the sidewalk with a purple futon, probably screaming at each other, but soon they would turn their collective rage toward me. The next 3 days of my vacation were a surreal mix of paradise and digital warfare. I blocked their numbers for the first 24 hours just so I could sleep. When I unblocked them, my phone nearly crashed from the influx of messages. The narrative had shifted. I was no longer just selfish. I was now a monster. Mom, I hope you're happy. Everly is crying in a motel room. We had to pay for a storage unit for her stuff because we couldn't fit it back in the car. You cost us hundreds of dollars. Dad, you humiliated us. The police, Camilla? Really? You called the cops on your own father? I raised you better than this. You are dead to me until you apologize. Everly, I'm going to sue you. I had squatters' rights. You illegally evicted me. My friend who is a paralegal said I can take you for emotional damages. They were trying to regain control. They were trying to spin the story so that I was the aggressor. They wanted me to feel guilty. They wanted me to grovel. But something had snapped in me. The distance gave me perspective. I realized that if I apologized now, if I gave an inch, they would take the whole apartment eventually. This was the hill I had to die on. I didn't reply to their threats. Instead, I started building my case. I knew Everly. I knew she would try to come back. I knew my parents would try to wear down Mr. Henderson or the doorman. I spent one morning of my vacation at an internet cafe, compiling everything. I downloaded the security footage from my apartment's nanny cam, a small camera I kept on my bookshelf to watch my cat, who was currently at a luxury pet hotel, thankfully. I hadn't checked it initially, but now I did. The footage was damning. It showed my father drilling out my lock. It showed my mother laughing as they dragged my Italian sofa out the door. Careful with it, Frank. We might be able to sell it, my mother said in the video. Sell it. I rewound the clip. Yeah, Everly needs cash for the deposit on a car if she's gonna live here, Dad replied, grunting as he shoved my couch into the hallway. Camilla won't miss it. She'll just buy another one. My blood ran cold. They weren't just storing it. They were planning to liquidate my furniture to fund Everly's life. I saved the clip. I backed it up to the cloud. Then I dug deeper. I looked at my bank statements. I noticed a few odd charges from a month ago, small things, Uber Eats, a Sephora charge, on a card I rarely used. I had assumed it was fraud and canceled the card, but now I looked closer at the delivery address. It was to my parents' house. Everly had been using my card numbers. The investigation phase of my vacation turned up a history of theft I had been too blind or too trusting to see. They didn't just feel entitled to my space, they felt entitled to my financial identity. I compiled it all into a PDF dossier: the unauthorized entry, the theft of property, attempted sale of the couch, the credit card fraud. I wasn't just dealing with a family dispute anymore. I was dealing with criminals. On the last day of my trip, I received an email from my dad. The subject line was, "Family meeting mandatory." Dad, we are having a sit-down dinner the night you get back at Aunt Marie's house. Everyone will be there. You need to explain yourself to the family. Everly is a wreck. You are going to fix this, or you are going to be cut off from this family forever. Aunt Marie was the matriarch. She was the only person in the family my parents actually feared. She was strict, religious, and held the purse strings for the larger family inheritance. My parents always presented a perfect image to her. They were trying to ambush me. They were going to use a public forum to shame me into submission. They thought that surrounded by cousins and aunts, I would fold. I smiled. I took a sip of my final Greek coffee. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room. "Let's have a meeting." I replied, "I'll be there." I boarded the plane the next morning. I wasn't the same woman who had left 10 days ago. That woman was a doormat. The woman flying back was a fortress, and she was bringing ammunition. The drive to Aunt Marie's house in Connecticut was usually a nostalgic journey through the tree-lined streets of my childhood. Today, it felt like a funeral procession. But as the miles ticked by on the odometer, I realized it wasn't my funeral I was driving to. I had the dossier in my passenger seat, a crisp, thick manila folder containing the bank statements, the chat logs, and a USB drive with the security footage. I had stopped at a print shop immediately after land. Ing at JFK. I was jet-lagged, running on 3 hours of sleep and airport coffee, but my mind was razor-sharp. Aunt Marie's house was a sprawling Victorian estate that smelled of old money and lemon polish. She was my father's older sister, a widow who had invested her late husband's manufacturing fortune with ruthless efficiency. She was the family bank, the matriarch, and the only person Frank and Barbara were terrified of disappointing. When I walked into the dining room, the tableau was already set. My parents were seated on one side of the long mahogany table. Everly was sandwiched between them, looking small and fragile. She was wearing an oversized sweater, a calculated move to look innocent, and dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. Aunt Marie sat at the head of the table, her posture rigid, her gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. "You're late," Marie said, her voice cutting through the silence. "Traffic coming out of the airport," I said calmly, taking the seat opposite them. I placed the manila folder on the table in front of me. "Well," Dad started, leaning forward, his face flushed with that specific shade of red he got when he was trying to bully someone. "At least you showed up. We were just telling Marie about your breakdown." "Breakdown?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Calling the police on your own sister," Mom interjected, her voice trembling with performed outrage. "Evicting her onto the street like a criminal. Marie, we tried to reason with her. We told her it was a family emergency. But Camilla, she's become so hard, so cold." Everly sniffled loudly. "I just wanted to be safe," she whispered, looking at Aunt Marie with wide, watery eyes. My ex was stalking me. I thought Camilla would want to protect me. I didn't know she hated me this much. Aunt Marie looked at me, her expression unreadable. Is this true, Camilla? Did you throw your sister out when she was in danger? They broke into my apartment, Aunt Marie, I said clearly. I was in Greece. They drilled my locks. We had implied consent. Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. We are her parents. We bought her first car. We paid for her braces. Since when do we need a written contract to help a family member in crisis? You have plenty of room, Camilla. You're never there. It was selfish, plain and simple. And the furniture? I asked, looking directly at my mother. Mom faltered for a second, her eyes darting away. We moved it to storage to make room for Everly's things. We were going to put it back. That's not what you said on the phone, I pressed. You said you were organizing it. Same difference, Mom snapped. God, you are so materialistic. It's just a couch, Camilla. Your sister was homeless. Aunt Marie cleared her throat. Frank, Barbara tells me you are asking for Camilla to pay for Everly's current accommodation and emotional damages. Is that correct? It's only fair, Dad said, crossing his arms. Camilla caused this mess. She needs to fix it. We want her to pay for Everly's hotel until she finds a new place, and we think she should apologize. Sincerely, to the whole family. And maybe, Everly added, her voice gaining a little strength, she should help me with the deposit on a new apartment, since she made me lose my last one. I looked at them, really looked at them. I saw the greed masked as grievance. I saw the absolute lack of love. They didn't see a daughter, they saw a resource that had malfunctioned. I won't be doing any of that, I said quietly. Then leave, Dad barked, pointing at the door. If you can't support this family, you aren't part of it. Marie agrees with us. Don't you, Marie? Aunt Marie looked at me. Camilla, you brought a folder. You haven't touched your food. Speak. I opened the folder. I didn't suffer a breakdown, I said, sliding the first piece of paper across the polished wood toward Aunt Marie. I suffered a theft, multiple thefts. Aunt Marie picked up the paper. It was the bank statement highlighting the charges to my parents' address. What is this? Marie asked, putting on her reading glasses. That is a record of credit card fraud, I explained, my voice steady. Everly stole my card numbers 3 months ago. She's been ordering clothes, makeup, and takeout to your house. Mom and Dad knew about it. I saw the delivery confirmations in their email when I was fixing their Wi-Fi last Christmas. I let it slide because it was small amounts. I thought it was a mistake, but it wasn't. That's a lie, Everly shrieked, sitting up straight, the frail victim act vanishing instantly. She's forging that. And this, I said, pulling out the USB drive, is the footage from inside my apartment 4 days ago. May I? I didn't wait for permission. I stood up and walked to the large flat-screen TV mounted above the fireplace. Aunt Marie's dining room was equipped for her investment Zoom calls. I plugged the drive in. The Roman 6. Dio appeared on the screen. It was crisp and clear. It showed Frank and Barbara wrestling my Italian sofa toward the door. The audio was perfect. Dad's voice filled the dining room. Careful with it, Frank. We might be able to sell it. Mom's voice? Yeah, Everly needs cash for the deposit on a car if she's gonna live here. Camilla won't miss it. She'll just buy another one. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavier than the air in a tomb. On the screen, my parents continued to loot my living room, discussing which of my electronics could be pawned and which should be kept for Everly. I paused the video on a frame of my mother laughing as she shoved my expensive throw pillows into a garbage bag. I turned back to the table. My parents were pale. All the blood had drained from Frank's face. Barbara was gaping like a fish out of water. You weren't storing my furniture, I said, my voice cold and hard. You were stealing it. You were going to sell my property to buy Everly a car. That is grand larceny. That is a felony. We were just talking, Dad stammered, sweat breaking out on his forehead. We didn't actually sell it. It's on the curb, you can't prove intent. The intent is on the tape, Frank, Aunt Marie said. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it carried more weight than a scream. She stood up. She was a small woman, but in that moment, she looked 10 feet tall. She looked at her brother with an expression of pure, unadulterated disgust. I have tolerated your mismanagement of money for years, Marie said, walking slowly around the table. I have tolerated your spoiling of that child, she gestured to Everly, who was now trembling for real. But I will not tolerate thieves, and I will certainly not tolerate scavenging off your own daughter like vultures. Marie, please, Mom begged, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. We were desperate. Everly needed help. Camilla has so much she doesn't share. She doesn't have to share. Marie slammed her hand down on the table, making everyone jump. It is hers. She earned it, something neither of you seem to understand. Marie turned to me. Camilla, take your folder. You are welcome in my home anytime. Then she turned to my parents. Get out. Marie, Dad started. Get out, she roared, pointing a shaking finger at the door. And don't think about asking me for the bridge loan for the business next month. The bank is closed, Frank. Permanently. If you go near Camilla's apartment again, I will personally pay for her legal fees to prosecute you. Now, leave my house before I call the police myself. Everly was the first to move. She scrambled up, grabbing her purse, not even looking at our parents. She ran out the door. Frank and Barbara followed, stumbling, muttering excuses that fell on deaf ears. The front door slammed shut. The sound echoed through the large house. I stood there, my heart hammering in my throat. Aunt Marie took a deep breath, adjusted her glasses, and sat back down. She picked up her wine glass, her hand shaking ever so slightly. The roast is getting cold, she said calmly. Sit down, Camilla. Tell me about Greece. I didn't stay long after dinner. I needed to be back in my own space. The drive back to the city was quiet. My phone didn't ring. Not once. I suspected they were too busy panicking about the financial lifeline Aunt Marie had just severed to harass me. Or perhaps, for the first time, they were actually afraid of me. When I pulled up to my building, the doorman, usually stoic, gave me a grave nod. Welcome back, Ms. Camilla, he said, opening the door. Mr. Henderson left a package for you at the desk. It was a set of new keys. They were heavy, solid brass. They felt like armor. I took the elevator up to the 4th floor. My hands trembled slightly as I slid the new key into the deadbolt. It turned with a smooth, satisfying click. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The apartment was quiet. The air was stale, smelling faintly of the cleaning solution Mr. Henderson's crew must have used after removing the squatters. I walked into the living room. It looked strange. The spot where my beautiful Italian sofa had been was empty, a void on the rug marking where it used to sit. The coffee table was gone too. But the purple futon was gone, the trash was gone, Everly's crystals were gone. I walked to the balcony doors and threw them open, letting the cool night air rush in, chasing away the lingering scent of my sister's cheap perfume. I stood there for a long time, looking out at the city lights. I thought I would feel sad. I thought I would feel the grief of losing my family, of finally accepting that they were broken beyond repair. But as I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the city air, I didn't feel grief. I felt free. For 29 years, I had been carrying them. I had been the backup plan, the safety net, the emotional punching bag. I had allowed them to strip mine my life because I thought that was the price of love. Tonight, I had stopped paying the bill. I went to the kitchen and opened a bottle of wine, one they had missed in their looting. I poured a glass and sat on the floor in the empty space where my couch used to be. I pulled out my phone and opened the furniture store's website. I found the sofa I had always wanted, not the beige one I bought because it was sensible, but a deep, emerald green velvet one. It was bold. It was expensive. It was entirely me. I hit order. Then I opened my contacts. I scrolled to Mom, Dad, and Everly. I didn't block them. Blocking them felt like hiding. Instead, I changed their ringtones to silent. They could scream into the void all they wanted. I wouldn't hear it. The next morning, I went down to Mr. Henderson's office. He was there, drinking his coffee. "They gone?" he asked, not looking up from his paper. "They're gone," I said, "and they won't be back." "Good," he grunted. "I kept the security deposit for the lock change. We square." "We're square," I smiled. "Actually, Mr. Henderson, thank you, you saved my home." He looked up then, his craggy face softening just a fraction. "You saved it yourself, kid. I just held the door." I walked back out into the sunlight. The city was loud, chaotic, and moving fast. I had a job to go to. I had a life to live. And for the first time, it was entirely, indisputably mine.